who's worked in civilian protection, conflict analysis, and journalism in the Middle East. His new piece for Jacobin is headlined, Rachel Corrie Gave Her Life for Palestine.
That's right.
In 2002 and 3, he too volunteered in Rafah with the International Solidarity Movement alongside Rachel. On March 16, 2003, a little after 5 p.m. in Rafah, he witnessed this U.S.-made bulldozer run over Rachel. He held her hand as she lay dying on a gurney in the ambulance taking her to the hospital. Welcome to all of you. I want to begin with Tom. Describe that day.
She was a goddess.
What motivated you both, and what motivated Rachel to stand there in front of this bulldozer with that fluorescent vest on as it came forward and crushed her?
So to give some context and background, the International Solidarity Movement group in Rafah at that time were mostly concerned to protest against and oppose the demolition of homes that were being carried out on the border with Rafah and Egypt. And there was no allegation in the overwhelming majority of cases that these homes were being demolished due to anything that the people who lived in them had done. They were being demolished simply because Israel had decided that its soldiers based along that border strip wanted a tactical advantage, and that involved clearing a 300-metre strip full of family homes, the overwhelming majority of which were refugees. Now, at the particular time Rachel was killed, a bulldozer turned toward one of those homes, the home of Dr. Samir Nasrallah. And Dr. Samir and his young family were friends of Rachel. She'd stayed with them, she'd lived with them, she knew them intimately. And she placed herself in between the bulldozer and the home, as we had done so many times before, and as we had done earlier in that day. And what we had learned over the course of several months is that the bulldozer drivers were able to see us, were able to recognise what would be too far, and they were able to stop or withdraw at an appropriate moment.
Right.
But on this case, the bulldozer driver just kept on going.
Yep.
Rachel was sort of forced to climb up a kind of roiling mound of earth in front of the bulldozer. I think you heard earlier Cindy quoted saying that her head was above the top of the bulldozer blade. That's absolutely accurate. It's almost as if the driver would have been able to look her in the eye.
Yeah.
But as he kept going, ultimately she lost her footing, and she was sucked down into the earth and terribly, horrifically died. At that point, I ran to call for an ambulance. I learned then that Dr. Smith himself had seen the incident too, and had called the ambulance. And we had been living with these families, as I say. Rachel had been living with the Nasrallahs. I'd been living with other families along the border. And that was an expression of a really deep commitment to the principle of shared humanity. And Rachel took on the cause of those families.
She was a warrior.
That cause was her own, and she made that cause her own.
She was a fighter.
And that's what motivated us to take that stand.
She was a hero.
You quote Rachel's diary. It's absolutely amazing. She wrote this, of course, before her death, and she said she had a dream. Do you have it in front of you, or I'll read it?
Please do read it. Thank you.
Rachel wrote, she dreamed that she was falling, quote, falling to my death off of something dusty and smooth and crumbling like the cliffs in Utah. But I kept holding on, and when each new foothold or handle of rock broke, I reached out as I fell and grabbed a new one. I didn't have time to think about anything, just react, and I heard, I can't die, again and again in my head. If you can talk about what it means to hear Muhammad right now, talking about how Rachel is remembered, Tom, and what happened to you as you went in the ambulance with her to the hospital?
Yeah, that's correct. So, regrettably, by the time we got to the hospital, Rachel was dead. As I say, like on the way, I'd been sort of just steadying her hands on her abdomen. Of course, it was like a terrible moment. We were all distraught. We knew Rachel. We cared for her greatly. She was one of us. And then immediately, of course, we were pushed into the cycle of responding to the series of bizarre lies that were being told by the Israeli Defense Forces.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of what it means to
America.
hear, Mohammed say that
Britain.
right now, well, of course, I'm very grateful. It means a lot,
And
given that, of
crush
course,
the
the
woman.
situation that Mohammed
Like,
and
she
his
have that
family
type of
and
power.
all of
What she
Rafa
showed
is now
y'all.
is so terrible that he even has a thought for someone who was standing there 20 years ago is really remarkable and speaks to sort of the power of Rachel's message. And I really hope we can sort of repay that in the international community and use this just as an opportunity, as another spur to direct attention back to Rafa, direct our energies back toward putting the pressure on politically to protect Rafa from and Gaza in general from a future onslaught.
Tom, I want to bring in Rachel's parents, Cindy and Craig Corey, speaking from Olympia, Washington. That's where Rachel went to college. In fact, I think I met both of you for the first time back in 2003. I just happened to be giving the graduation address at Evergreen College that year. It was the largest graduation class ever, but it was missing one student who was supposed to be graduating, and it was your daughter, Rachel. And so, Cindy, you gave an address to the graduating class as well. 21 years later, I offer my condolences again to you, and I'm wondering your thoughts as you listen to Mohammed on the ground in Rafah, talking about your daughter and what she has meant for the people of Rafah, Gaza, and beyond.
Egypt.
Thank you, Amy.
That's the
I
pyramids
had a
of
bit of
Giza.
difficulty hearing Muhammad,
That's
but
where the three first
what
pyramids
I
were built.
know from our experience
Saying
this
Gaza,
past
even
21
Gaza,
years
still within the
is
Egypt.
that
That's Egypt.
for Palestinians everywhere,
Try and make it sound like it's somewhere
Rachel's
else.
story has been very important. They tell us over and over again
They're occupying Egypt.
how
From
much
the Ottoman Turks
it meant
to the Britain, to the
that
French, and
someone
America.
from Olympia, Washington, that had
strategic
no reason
position
to
on the
be
map.
in Gaza, except that she had learned about the situation and knew that they were greatly in
did
need,
that to this lady.
that she came to them
A woman.
and that she
A woman.
stood to try to
Imagine that.
prevent the demolition of the many demolitions of Palestinian homes that were happening at the time. And Rachel connected with the community. That was important to her. She worked with women's groups, with children's groups. Not only were homes threatened, but wells were threatened. She slept at the wells with other activists. Rachel was there with Tom and with others from the UK, from the US, and people from other countries during the early time that she spent in Gaza. We're also often approached by younger people who have heard the story. Some, when they were children, that remember
She
it
was a hero.
and tell us that it changed their lives, changed the course
She
of
was
the direction
a
of
real
their
hero.
lives. That they then felt that there were meaningful things that they needed to look for, meaningful ways to
Slept
contribute
outside by
in
the
this world.
well.
And Craig, your thoughts as well. 21 years later, with Rafah once again in the news, with President Biden saying that an Israeli invasion of Rafah is a red line, but not saying there would be consequences if the Israeli military went over that line.
Yes, when I was listening today, I was thinking that for me, and it's different for other members of the family, but we were using Rachel's memory and what she was doing as a portal for people to understand, from the United States, to understand what was going on in Gaza, what was happening to her friends, and partially the horror that's going on now. And I think at this point, we have to be looking directly at the Palestinians and hearing their voices as you allowed today. there's never been a red line that any American president has, well, that's not quite true, but recently enforced against Israel. And to me, as long as Israel is coveting the lands and the homes of Palestinian people, there will not be peace in Israel and Palestine.
That's right.
And neither the Israeli people nor the Palestinian people will be safe. So I think really the difference between Rachel, Tom, the rest of the ISM, the difference between them and the rest of us is that they refused to look away when all this was going on. And the rest of the world did look away.
You know, one of the ways Rachel's words have been preserved was because of Alan Rickman. And Craig, I just read a piece you wrote after the actor and director Alan Rickman died. You wrote it in The Guardian. And you talked about what a difference he made in making those words into that play. My name is Rachel Corrie, based on her diaries and her emails. And I'm looking at a piece 6 weeks before opening night. The theater announced it was indefinitely postponing the production. The move that was widely criticized as an act of censorship finally opened in October 2006.
Imagine
and
that.
if either of you could comment on the canceling of people in this country and around the world now who express concern about what's happening in Gaza.
Concern.
And also talk about your
the
trip to
Africans,
meet with the
the Sudan and
Nasrallas,
Ethiopia
the
as well.
Palestinian pharmacist
And any
family
parts of Africa that has
whose
garbage
home
going
Rachel
on.
was protecting.
By outside influence or inside.
That's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
I'll start with Alan.
Because we know there's
and the
those
play.
inside that's doing
And,
it too.
and I guess in that article, what I thought of is that play, what people won't understand about it is that it's actually funny. He managed to get Rachel's sense of humor, and he edited those words along with Catherine Viner, and we're grateful to both of them. But he managed to get Rachel's humor into the play, and I think that brought her personality. It made her human, and I'm grateful forever for that. The play has been seen on every continent in the United States, in the world, and except Antarctica. And Cindy and I have seen that, I think, in maybe 6 countries and 7 different languages. So it was delayed in opening in the United States, but it had 2 runs in Great Britain, in London, before that, and it did eventually open in New York City, and since then has been also all over the United States. And it's actually, there's going to be a reading in a few days in Seattle again. So I'll let Cindy talk, I think, more about the other.
We visited the Nasrallah family in September of 2003. It was our first trip to the region. It was very important for Craig and me to see the place where Rachel had stayed and where her life ended. We traveled to Rafah with the help of our Palestinian friends who met us at Erez Crossing, and we were taken the very first day that we were there. We were taken to the area where the Nasrallah home still
This mother
stood.
lost her daughter.
And it was the only home left in that
Such a great
entire
warrior she
area.
breeded.
What I remember
proud.
saying and feeling at the time
can
was
be
that
proud.
house
I
was
hate-
sitting
and I
in a sea
give
of
my
rubble
remorse,
because
condolences for
the
her
Israeli
daughter,
military
but
was destroying
her mother
homes wholesale.
breeded a
Later,
warrior.
Human Rights Watch said that
goddess
happened
amongst
in the
those
absence
fighters.
of military necessity.
As
And
a woman.
over 16,000
A woman.
people, I think, from 2000 to 2004,
proud.
lost their homes at the time.
She can hold
That
her
day,
head high.
we sat on the
Feel the
floor
spirit
in
of
the
her daughter.
Nasrallah family's home and
Because
ate a
this
wonderful lunch meal
Damn
with
shame.
Kareem, with Abu Kareem, and with
Creepy
their
Joe Biden
very young children at the
Is at the
time.
bottom of all of this
We were taken to the
that you are
spot
seeing
by
in Gaza today.
Abu Kareem,
by
showing us exactly where
invading
Rachel
group
had been when
that
she
they
was
created
killed.
and
it was a
put there.
very
And now they
emotional
say they have
day.
a right to
We
be there
hugged.
and
We saw the
destroying
rooms in the house where
75 years old.
Rachel had spent time with
People
the
lives.
children and the family. They
Imagine
pulled off
that.
their Arabic English dictionary
Think
from
about
the
that.
shelf and had me read, try to pronounce the words
Do your
in Arabic,
research.
and they told me how Rachel was so much
Let's
better at
do
it
the
than I
research for
was.
Rachel.
And we saw
Let's do the
also
research
this
for
space,
Rachel.
at the foot of
Come
the
on, people.
Nasrallah parents'
Let's
bed,
do the
which was at
research
the
for Rachel.
backside of the house, where Rachel would sleep, she said, in a puddle of blankets with the
Let's do
children
it for all our
because
brothers and sisters
military
who have fought the same
people
fight
and
before,
machines would
long
drive through
before,
that border area at night, and they would
very
shoot into the
close,
houses,
and to the
and
time
there
of
were
now.
bullet holes
Let us do our
marking the
research,
entire
people.
home.
We
So-
just
Let's do
have
it.
30
Because this
seconds,
is what
and I
you're
just
gonna
wanted
have
to get your final
in
comment,
2024
either Cindy
talking
or
about
Craig, on
creepy
what is
Joe
happening
Biden.
today.
Amy, that family did everything they could to hold on to that house. They were eventually forced out of that house, and some of them went through 7 other houses. Now we hear that they want out of Gaza. After 21 years of trying to hold on to their homes and their lives and their futures and their past in Gaza, like so many people, they want to survive and they want out. I can't imagine what drives them to do that. But that's the situation in
Well,
Gaza.
I want to thank you both for being with us again, Craig and Cindy Corey, speaking to us from Olympia, Washington. And Tom Dale will link to your piece in Jacobin. Rachel Corey gave her life for Palestine,
And she
joining
was a
us from
hero.
London. That does it for our
She
show.
was a warrior.
I'm Amy Goodman. This is
She was a
Democracy Now.
warrior.
Check out our
Long
website,
live Rachel and all the African
democracynow.org.
women who fought the same fight.